Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. As I mentioned before, I was going to be doing a video of kind of like the pros and cons of my feelings towards the car. The car has about 500 miles on it, so it's still fairly new, but I just wanted to give kind of my first impressions of the good things that I love about the car and some things that I don't like so far, and I just kind of wanted to see what you guys thought of these. Now, as I run through these, they're not going to be in a set list. They're not going to be like number one, number two. I'm just going to kind of label them as I go, as I wrote them down. So we're going to start off the video with the first item. Now, the first item is kind of controversial depending on how you look at it, and that's the price that you get for this kind of car. You get a lot of car for the money if you're looking at strictly MSRP, which stands for Manufactured Suggested Retail Price, which for the Civic Si for this year, for the 11th gen, is around 27,000, 28,000, depending on where you are. For me, it was around 28,000. Plus, you got to add like destination and then taxes and tags and all that. So you're looking between probably 30 to mid 30s as your walk out the door price, depending if you give money down or not. For that kind of money, this car is very fun. I think it's very well priced at MSRP. Unfortunately, due to the chip shortage, as we all know, there's a lot of markups going on with the car. I've called pretty much every Honda dealer in my state, and I've seen as low as 1,000 up to 10,000. So it really depends on where you are. It's really up to you to kind of do your homework, to kind of look for those dealers in those places that aren't really marking up as much. But the tricky part is sometimes, and I've noticed this, is that they'll be like, oh, we don't have that big of a markup or a markup at all. But then they'll add, not fees, but they'll add packages, mandatory packages when you purchase a car. For example, this car, I had to purchase like the mud guards or something like that, which was like an extra 1,000. And there was no way to remove it. That's just how it came. And they added it on, and there was no way to get the car without it. So these dealers are finding creative ways to kind of just make sure you read or you ask the right questions about marketing, you know, what packages the car has, what's the markup, and make sure you talk to them beforehand, because, you know, you're not the only one asking about the car, and that can make or break the deal. But if we're looking outside of that, just MSRP without all, you know, the hocus pocus going on, it's a great deal for what you get. The car is very well priced in its segment. I mean, you get a lot of premium stuff. It is a Honda car, so you get a lot of premium stuff for the money. So if we're looking at it from that aspect, I very much enjoy my purchase because I know in the long run, it's a good investment. My second pro for this car, though, has to deal with that you are buying a Honda. So it's very reliable. You know, Honda's, you know, tested the test of time. They've been around forever. They make really good products. They last a long time. They hold their value for a long time. You know, you try to buy a used car, and again, we're in this market where, you know, things that are used are very, very highly priced. But usually when you're trying to buy a Honda, they kind of have this extra price tacked on because of the Honda name. And, you know, they're one of the best, most reliable companies out there. You know, their service is really good. Their cars last forever. So I took that into consideration when I purchased a vehicle, and I ended up purchasing this SI. I very much took that into account. You know, would I buy like something like a Honda over something else? And I kind of took into consideration, you know, kind of the history of Honda and their track record with their cars. My third positive for this car is that it's very fun to drive. It's definitely very much a driver's car. You definitely wants you to rev it and kind of, you know, pretty much push it to its limit, which is probably where the most fun is had. Even though the red line's about 6,500 RPM, it wants you to stay up there and just bang through those gears. It's really fun to drive. It's very nimble. You know, some people would want more power out of an SI, and obviously more power means better. But honestly, it's really fun from where it is. And it kind of leads into another positive that I'll talk about in a bit. But just the way the car feels, you know, it's very sporty, especially if you have it on the sport mode. The throttle response is very, very good. So it's just a very fun car to drive all the time. It's a good daily, you know. So that is definitely another reason why I picked this car. Now, the third reason I picked this car is because of the shifter. I pretty much love the shifter and the steering rack in this car. They're very precise. They feel very sporty. The shifter itself is very notchy. You can definitely feel when you go through the gears. I know with previous SIs. The gearbox seems to be a little loose, and people change the bushings and things like that and switch to like a short shifter. This one's pretty close to where I would want it. Maybe I'll upgrade to maybe an aftermarket shifter later on, but for now I am extremely happy with it. It feels exactly like a driver's car, and I have no complaints about the shifter at all. So there's a shifter, and you can kind of see that it's a really good shape. It looks really nice, you know, with the leather stitching and the metal. The metal sometimes can get hot, but that's okay, you know, and it feels just very notchy. It's a very short throw from first to second. It just feels very natural to shift in this car, and the knob feels at least good in my hand. So it's definitely one of the best shifters I've used in a long time. Another really good thing about this car is, as we all know, Honda Civics, they're very, you know, there's a lot of aftermarket parts for this car. The engine isn't new. I believe the previous Civics has the same engine. Maybe this one's just tweaked a little bit. So the aftermarket parts, if you want to, you know, get into like air cooling or suspension or wheels or turbos or whatever, this car, there will be a market for this car, and there's going to be a market for this car for a very, very long time, if not forever. This is one of Honda's most sold cars, one of the easiest to tune and put aftermarket parts on it. So that's another reason why I thought, you know, me forward thinking, eventually, you know, if I want to make some changes here and there, I know that I will have zero problem finding parts for this car, because it's so plentiful. There's parts everywhere for this car. So that's definitely a plus for me. You know, in the future, if I want to decide to maybe make some tweaks here and there to the engine, or if I want to add more power, or maybe, you know, get some suspension coilovers or something like that, I know that it'll be easy for me just to either log online or go to a place here and they'll recommend me hundreds of parts that I could probably get. Another thing that I really like about this car is that it comes with Bose audio. Now, you know, like most people, I love to listen to music while I drive, and really having that premium Bose audio really it makes the car seem more upscale, especially for the price. So that's definitely a premium thing for me. A lot of cars in this segment, you have to get like a special option to get like the higher up, the better sound system. This one just comes as is, which is great. So having that Bose system already installed really makes me feel like my purchase was well spent, because I'm getting so much car for the price, and having that Bose system really makes the audio in this car sound really, really good. Now, depending how you think about it, this next thing could either be a positive or negative for you. For me, it's a positive, because I am getting a little bit older. I'm 34, so I am starting to think about, you know, future plans with family and things like that. And since this year the 11th Gen Civic is a little bit bigger than last year's, and it only comes as a sedan, I can definitely use it, you know, forward thinking into the future. If I have a family and things like that, I can definitely use it for that setting. On top of that, it gives me what I need out of that sportiness, you know, that young gun that I have in me that loves to bang through the gears and do all that. And you know, it can be a weekend car where I go carve some roads up in the mountains, but it can also be a car that I use for work, and it can also be a car that I use for my family if I need to. So that's definitely a positive for me, that the car is a little bit bigger. The opposite side of that is, you know, if you're more performance thinking, you know, it is a bigger car, so it's not quite as nimble and as small as the previous gen. And I know a lot of people did not like that the new 11th Gen Civic was bigger, but that's just depending on where you are in life. And that's how I kind of view it. I like it that it's a little bit bigger. It's a little bit more comfortable for road trips, and it's a lot more comfortable for people if I want to have people in the back. Not that the previous generation wasn't. This one's just a little bit more. This leads me to my first downside of the car, which is the price also. Because of those markups, everything's kind of bogus. You know, it took me months to find a car that I wanted to buy. And in fact, I originally wanted to buy a Type R, but they're just so expensive that I really didn't want to commit for something that's, you know, if for brand new now, was going for probably 50, 60, sometimes even in the 70s, which is just, you know, insane. You know, I would never buy a car, at least a Type R, for that kind of money. So I kind of had to restrain myself to kind of go into, you know, one bracket lower into the SI. But I very much like it. Again, it sucks that we have to deal with this chip shortage, you know, but what can we do? It's probably not going to get better anytime soon. If you're in the market for a car and can wait, it's probably your best bet. But if you need a car now, it's best to like shop early and kind of shop as broad as you can. You know, I would rather travel 8 hours to a dealer to get a better deal than to, you know, shop at my local dealer. But that would be just me. Sometimes people just, they need it now, they gotta go, and they gotta pay for it. But that's my first downside, is definitely the price. It's definitely hard to find something that's affordable depending on your budget. But we can't really do anything right now. Neither can the dealers. You know, supply and demand. As long as people buy these cars, they're going to keep selling them for higher and higher prices. Just like the graphics cards issue. You know, it's the same problem. These chips, the silicon, is, you know, very, very dire to find right now, and we're just going to have to deal with these markups until later on. Now, talking about another thing that I don't like about this car is that the Honda Civic 11th gen, at least for the SI in the United States, doesn't get a lot of the goodies that some other places like Canada, for example, get. Like in Canada, you get heated seats. Here in the States, you don't get heated seats. You get, in Canada, you get things like fog lamps, and you get like a heated steering wheel and a couple other little small things. I think the dash also has like little lights that tell you when to change gears. And it's stuff like that that sometimes make me feel like, man, like I really wish that this car came with all that stuff, because even it would make it just that much more of a better buy. But I'm not sure why they didn't include it in the United States. It's not like, you know, the States doesn't have cold places for heated seats and heated steering wheels and things like that, or fog lights for that matter. So I would like to know, if anybody knows, please let me know. But that's just another thing that I don't like, where, like, you know, we don't get certain things that somewhere kind of close by like Canada gets. So that's just a little gripe that I have. Now, my dislikes for this car, I'm kind of nitpicking, because, you know, I like this car a lot. But another thing that I thought was kind of a letdown is that the Civic Si for the 11th gen doesn't have unique wheels. You know, these black matte wheels that you get on this car are the same for the base Civic, or not the base Civic, but I believe you can get them on the normal Civics. And I would think for the Si, you can, you know, hopefully get like maybe a unique paint finish or some sort of unique wheel to kind of, you know, differentiate yourself, that you got that Si over, you know, over the Sport or the normal ones. But it doesn't have that. So probably when the Type R comes out, it's gonna definitely most likely have different wheels. So you'll have to upgrade to, you know, to the big boy package to be able to get those different wheels. But like I said before, this car is, you know, there's a lot of aftermarket parts available. You can certainly change the wheels out on this. It's just an extra cost to you. It would have been nice if they came with unique wheels. Not saying these wheels are bad. I like them a lot. But just another way to differentiate yourself from the normal Civics. That's all. Now, driving a lot of manual cars, you know, everyone knows, or, you know, what rev hang is. And unfortunately, in this car, there is rev hang still. It probably has to do with, you know, them trying to limit the emissions the car makes to get that, you know, that I think it's like 28, 36 or something, 28 in the city, 30 something in the highway. So they have to kind of limit the way the revs fall to kind of get that emissions. But that's just a little bit of a letdown. Excuse me, I had to sneeze. But yeah, the rev hang is a little bit of a letdown. It's not that big of a deal. It's not like it's a long time. It is a decent amount of time that you have to wait before you switch gears. The good thing is you can kind of just force yourself through that. But, you know, again, if you get something, an aftermarket part like a K-tuner or a Honda Flash or something like that, it'll most likely get rid of that, or at least diminish that a lot. But, you know, out of the package, if you will, there is rev hang, so you do have to get used to that. But most cars nowadays, sport cars, unless you go into the, you know, the higher expensive cars, kind of have rev hang. So I myself am used to that, but, you know, a lot of people might not be. Now, the number one thing that I do not like about this car, which I think they completely skimped out on, that I just could not believe that it's such bad quality, is the rear view camera. Which I've read that it's, a lot of people also agree with me on that. It's just very low quality. It's very grainy, and you would think for something, you know, from 2022 that they could fit a better rear view camera back there. Maybe it's to keep costs low, but how much could an extra, a better camera be back? My dash cam cameras, which are just 1080p cameras, they're not even high def or anything, are a lot better than that rear view camera. I'm going to show you what it looks like so you can kind of see what I'm talking about. Now you can see, guys, it's kind of hard to see on video. It's better to see it in person, obviously. But the details on this rear view camera, I mean, they're fine, don't get me wrong. It definitely works. But it's kind of hard to see that the details, like on the bushes, you can't even see this. It's just like a little green glob. In this car over here, it's very hard to see. And just the ground looks very grainy. And I just wish that the camera just had a little bit more definition, because it is important when you're backing up to kind of have that definition. Otherwise, your eyes might not catch something. And I just wish that it was a little bit higher quality, especially for a car that's going to cost you $30,000 to $35,000, maybe a little bit more depending on where you are. You would think that they would install a better rear view camera, considering the overall package of the car. Now, my last con of the car that I thought of, and this is just because we're in in 2022 now, thinking about how things are solely connected through our phones and everything like that. This car does have Apple CarPlay and Android Auto. It has wireless Apple CarPlay and Android Auto, which is great. The connectivity for the driver and the passenger, the front passenger, is good because I can connect my phone here. You've seen in my other videos how I have my 2 dash cams connected up there. Where it kind of sucks is that there's no connectivity in the back. There's no USB charging in the back. So if you have friends in the back and they need to charge, you're gonna have to run a line from all the way up here so that they can charge their phone. And there's no charging here in the center, in the middle console. There's nothing in here for charging. It's a good hole, but there's nothing in there to charge. So it just seems like a little thing that they could have done better on is if they just added a USB charger here in the back center. There's not even air vents. And thinking, for 2022, things would have advanced a little bit enough that we could get some of those little, quality of life things that you would want. Again, this isn't the most expensive car. I can understand why they skimped out on this stuff. But given that it's 2022 and a lot of the competition has this, you would think that Honda would also include that. But that's just a little gripe for me, just me thinking about just what year we're in and how things have advanced over the years, and where I think cars should be in terms of value and the price that you're paying. And obviously year after year things get better, but sometimes maybe with these sporty trims they think that they can get away with not having those because you're getting like a sportier, to save weight and all that stuff. Most people, in my opinion, I don't think care about if you add an extra charger, it's going to add, a little bit more weight. They would rather have that quality of life over not having it. Well, guys, that's it. Those were my pros and cons that I've seen about the car so far. Again, I only have about 500 miles in the car, so I haven't even really let it rip, just to kind of give the car enough time to kind of mesh together, have those nuts and bolts mesh together. They usually say about between 500 to 1,000 miles to let the car kind of wear in, and then from then you'll be okay to kind of go all the way to red line and all that, and kind of let it rip and have as much fun as you can. But for right now, I'm really enjoying the car. I think the pros outweigh the cons. I think you'll find that the cons are really not as bad when you think about it. But for what it is, the car is such tremendous value, especially if you think about it at an MSRP of around $27,000 to $28,000. If you can find it in that price and not have a markup of any kind, maybe if you wait a year or two and buy it in that time frame, I think the car is an incredible buy. I think if you're looking for something to have fun with and potentially change some parts here and there in the aftermarket like I plan on doing in the future, this car is a great platform to do it with. There are so many people that are willing to help. This car is just tried and true. It's survived for a very long time. One of the only cars left that you can buy in a manual, because everything's moving to automatic and CVTs and things like that. So I'm very happy with my purchase. I hope you guys will be too with your future purchases if you decide to buy this car. And thanks so much for watching. I'll catch you in the next one.